I'm Rochelle Gentile, president of the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra League. I'm here at the Dubuque Golf and Country Club, kicking off our virtual Soundbite series. Under normal circumstances, you'd be right here with me, enjoying a great lunch and a preview of the DSO's upcoming concert, and I'm sure you will be again soon. As you may know, the DSOL develops and administers projects, programs, and events that provide music education opportunities to folks of all ages, as well as financial support to the DSO and its youth ensemble programs. Each year, the League contributes support to youth education events and programs such as the 3rd and 5th grade Arts Trek concerts, the 4th grade Adopt a Musician program, the Youth Concerto competition, the Dubuque Symphony Youth Ensembles, and the Summer String Camp. Along with our many other endeavors is our Senior Classics program, now in its 9th year, providing performances by DSO musicians to entertain residents and their families at local nursing homes and assisted living centers. While the past year has looked a little different, we continue to focus our efforts on fundraising. We encourage and welcome you to join us in our 54th year of supporting the DSO. Please check out the DSO's website for more information about how you can get involved. We hope to see you soon, but before I go, I'd like to introduce our esteemed music director and conductor, Dr. William Intriligator.
Thank you, Rochelle, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited that you're tuning into these Soundbites videos. I'm glad that I can reach you, although virtually here, and have a chance to share my thoughts about the program for our Classics 1 concerts on February 20th and 21st. We're so excited to get back to making music together. And as we had to redesign this season, one of the things we kept in mind was we wanted to keep the audience safe, and we wanted to keep the musicians safe as well. As you know, Five Flags Theater has a wonderful sense of intimacy. One of the things that's great about it is that you're never very far from the stage. And one of the other things about it is that the stage itself is not very large. There's a sense of intimacy even among the musicians as we're on the stage. And so if we're going to socially distance our musicians for these concerts, we knew that we had to use a very small ensemble of players. So for Classics 1, the total number of musicians on stage will be about 12, I think it is. Not a huge orchestra. That's what we can do safely. And we're going to try to get a little bit bigger as we progress over the course of these 4 Classics concerts this season, so that maybe by Classics 4 in June, we'll have a little larger group. No, so one of the things that I thought maybe was at our disposal at the Classics concerts that would not normally be is some chamber music repertoire, some music specifically written for a smaller group. And so on this concert, we're going to have 2 pieces that are actually for string quartet. And the ulterior motive here is that while the string quartet is performing, I can be off stage, not conducting, and preparing for the final piece on the program on which I'm going to be playing oboe. So it's kind of a practical thing as well for me to, conduct the first several pieces on the program and then let the string quartet perform while I get my oboe playing ready. So the first string quartet that we're going to perform is a wonderful piece, and I'm so excited to introduce it to you. It's Florence Price's 5 Folksongs in Counterpoint. Florence Price might not be a household name yet, but her music is getting performed more and more now. Now, she was a pioneer in classical music in the 1900s. Well, she lived from 1887 to 1953. And she has the honor of being the first African-American woman to have a symphony performed by a major orchestra, when her Symphony No. 3 was performed by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra in the 1930s. Chicago was her home at that time, but she grew up in the South. Then she went to New England Conservatory, where she actually had to pretend to be Mexican and not African-American in order to be accepted there. She won all sorts of prizes and awards even as an undergraduate in composition. She was extremely talented. And then she went to live in, I think it was Alabama. Her maiden name, by the way, was Smith, Florence Smith, but then she married, I think he was a lawyer named Mr. Price. They later separated and divorced, but they left Alabama because there was actual lynchings happening. And so fearing their lives and safety and wanting to raise kids, they moved up north to Chicago. So then they separated and Chicago became her permanent base. She was very involved in composing music that was both secular and spiritual. she had a very deep spirituality, and she had a strong connection with the spirituals, the African American spirituals that were sung so often. And in an early version of this string quartet, it was actually, the title was actually, I think, Negro Folk Songs in Counterpoint. And there were, I think, only 3 of the 5 movements then. And then she expanded it to 5 movements, and she called it 5 Folk Songs in Counterpoint. And perhaps the ones that she added weren't specifically African American folk songs, but some of them are, as you'll see. So the folk songs, the 5 that we have here, are Calvary, which is perhaps not the most well-known of the folk songs, certainly an African-American spiritual for sure. And then the second movement, which is Oh My Darling Clementine. My guess is that's one of the ones that was added later. And then Drink to Me Only with Thine Eyes, another one which I think was added later. Just these gorgeous, wonderful American folk songs. Shortening Bread is the 4th movement, and it's a very short Shortening Bread. The whole movement is 1.5 minutes. And then the final one is Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. And what Florence Price does is she lovingly takes these well-known folk songs and creates an incredible counterpoint with them, adding wonderful accompaniment and unusual harmonies. Sometimes she masks the actual melody in a different voice. Sometimes she enjoys passing it around the different instruments of the string quartet, 2 violins, viola, and cello, of course. And sometimes she adds jazzy harmonies because, that was part of what was going on at the time. She wrote this in 1950. So she was a pioneer in so many ways, and much of her music was not performed during her lifetime, unfortunately. Many songs were, but part of the problem was that as wonderful as her music was, and as, she won these awards and had many different opportunities, the trick was that publishers wouldn't publish her music. They were worried that there wouldn't be enough people to perform them. And so that was really one of the main barriers for a lot of minority composers, whether they were women or minority or both. And so her music was not published, which was a big problem. It wasn't actually until just about maybe 10 or 12 years ago that a whole cache of her music, unknown music, was found in an abandoned house in a city about an hour north of Chicago that was like her summer home. So the new owners of that house in the 2000s were about to renovate, and they were about to destroy this one area of the house and rebuild it. And then they came across all these musical scores, the treasure trove of Florence Price pieces. Turns out she wrote 4 symphonies and many other pieces. And now a great publishing house, G. Schirmer, has taken all that and is going to try to make it available to the world. And so you're going to be hearing the name Florence Price quite a bit more. She was an important voice in the 20th century classical music scene. And it's so wonderful to bring her music to life now. And one of the things that's great about the 5 folk songs in Counterpoint is that, like I mentioned, they're expressive, they're dramatic, they're spiritual, they're inventive, they speak to her deep spirituality, yet they have harmonic daring. So I feel like, from what little I know of Florence Price, that these pieces are so quintessentially Florence Price. They have all those elements in them. As you hear it, try to listen for the melody of these folk songs as it's passed around and sometimes obscured by unusual harmonies and other counterpoints. The counterpoint in the title refers to these other secondary lines that are going along underneath the melody or sometimes above it. The piece is exciting and it ends with incredible energy on a very much of an upbeat kind of feel to it. So what's special is that we're getting to represent a sort of distinct and newly rediscovered voice in the classical music canon. And so great to bring her music to life. That's Florence Price's 5 folk songs in Counterpoint. I'd like to add a little addendum to my video about Florence Price's 5 folk songs and Counterpoint. I realized that I never played any examples of the music for you, and I want to do that. There's some wonderful examples on YouTube. I also forgot to mention a couple of other interesting things about her life. I had some notes here. I just want to double check. One thing that was another great honor for her was that Marian Anderson, the great singer, she had a concert at the Lincoln Memorial on Easter Sunday in 1939, and she sang Florence Price's setting of "My Soul's Been Anchored by the Lord," and that helped establish more renown for her music at that time. More and more people were interested in her settings of these songs. That was a special opportunity. And I mentioned that her Third Symphony was performed by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra in the 1930s. That was part of a competition that she won, a sort of a nationwide competition that she won, which was a huge honor. She wrote over 300 works, and almost none of them were published in her lifetime. It's just unbelievable. Well, here's an example of the first movement, Calvary, from the 5 folk songs and Counterpoint. This one starts with some of the most dense counterpoint of all 5 movements. And it's hard to hear that melody of every time I think about Jesus. That's that opening line that keeps getting passed around from instrument to instrument. Clementine, oh my darling Clementine, is a little bit more obvious. Here's a little bit of that movement. The counterpoint doesn't obscure it yet. It will a little later. It's wonderful to hear these well-known songs in this setting. Jazzy moment, maybe? Drink to Me Only with Thine Eyes is one of my favorites. It has a peace and a peaceful quality about it, which I really love. It's almost like the central slow movement adagio of this group of 5. It's gorgeous. Shortening bread brings it back to incredible energy. Here's a very short shortening bread. Lot of fun. And Swing Low, Sweet Chariot starts with just one solo cello playing that folk song and then passing it around to the higher and higher instruments. And as it does, the original, it's almost like a fugue where the original instrument or the previous instruments continue the counterpoint accompaniment underneath the melody, and eventually everybody's playing. And it's a very thick style, but it ends in this just wonderful way. Here's a little bit toward the end of the Swing Low, Sweet Chariot movement. wonderful music. It's so great. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this piece. Thank you.